next on the agenda is Barbara Corcoran Speaks. Darren, you want to kind of summarize it a little bit or just intro it? And I'll get the video together here.
Sure, man. I think every week we're trying to find the topic of, what's the theme of that week? What's the conversation? Maybe some direction on where the market's heading. And this video, we've done a lot of articles and write-ups. This one is specifically a video. And she lays it out like only a shark can, to quote her. And it's just kind of brutal. Particularly if you're a buyer, it's all glorious if you're a seller these days. So we're always looking at both sides and trying to inform. Often a lot of the information they're talking about is the struggle as a buyer, but it's great if you're a seller. So she lays it out, and we'll just kind of pop in here and there where we feel it's worth chatting about and see how it relates to our local market. Again, this is a video about the national market, but it's all very relative. The majority of it is all very relative locally.
Okay, well, let's listen in, and I'll hit it. And of course, it's not playing. Hold on.
Honor and privilege here of bringing back on one of our guests here to discuss a boom in real estate we've seen play out over the last few months here, continuing to run red hot during the pandemic, with buyers tripping over each other to compete on bids with what little inventory still exists out there on the market. Now, housing experts at Zillow are calling for 2021 to be the hottest year for existing home sales since 2005, notching a more than 17% jump over what we saw happen last year in 2020. This year projecting to hit 6.6 million sales nationwide. And for more on the latest on the real estate front, as well as all things small business, I have the privilege, nay, the honor here of bringing on our favorite shark from the tank. Barbara Corcoran joins us now.
Hi,
Barbara,
Zach.
good to be chatting with you again. Good to see you. I mean, we've talked a lot about real estate being very busy right now, but when you look at it, we're talking also about, inventory shortages. What are you seeing right now? Because it sounds like a lot of buyers are competing against each other.
More than anything else, I'm seeing that every buyer out there is panicked and depressed. They're panicked and depressed for good reason. Most people are being forced to spend a lot more in the house than they ever thought they would. Prices are up. Just in the last 12 months alone, actual sale prices are up 15%. I don't know if that's a record. I just don't remember ever a time where prices went up 15% in a year. I should have really checked that out. Not.
So anything there, Darren?
Sure. 15% in sub-markets and local markets. I'll start with that. Sure, they've gone up that and more. We had consecutive years of that in Los Angeles, but nationally, no. That's a big jump. And they are talking about volume here, just to clarify, a 17% increase in volume.
Okay, let's keep going.
My memory anyway. And you know what? The people are making bids, putting 10% down, more often 20, 25% down, and they're waiving all their contingencies. And that's proving a problem most recently because people are not getting the financing. They've made an all cash bid, or they're waiving inspections, and they find that there's a lot wrong with the house and they're already committed. So overall, I would say that the buyers have had the toughest, especially last 6 months, than I have ever seen in my life.
Yeah, that's why it seems to me.
Stop there.
Yeah. There's a lot to unpack there. I mean, I'll go back to panic and depressed, as it shows right there. If you're a buyer right now, it's brutal. It's just brutal. And then leading into what she's saying, removing contingencies. And gosh, if you're doing that, and we've done it, you need to have some really good agents that understand the process and have really good lenders. You're not removing contingencies with, some big bank lender. They're not navigating. They're not in the weeds with you, making it work, man. I mean, our lenders are in the weeds and they know it and they understand it. So it's tough though, man. I mean, some buyers are seeing the market run away. You've got a reasonable amount who are stepping back saying, this is just too aggressive. It's too much. I'm going to wait for it to come down. Nobody's saying it's going to come down out there in the market at all. That doesn't mean it won't, but that's certainly not the prediction from anybody trying to futurize what's going to happen in the market.
Well, we'll hit the play button here, but yeah, it's fairly evenly balanced here between her and the journalists. So let's keep going.
Yes.
All right.
To me, like, it might be time to hit the brakes if you are a buyer out there, right? I mean, if you're kind of having to deal with all that, the Zillow survey says that 1 in 10 Americans say they've already moved in the past year. I suspect that it might get a little bit more intense in terms of the buyers' competition here. So when you see that, would your advice be maybe, wait a bit if you can here, since it seems like supply and demand is out of whack?
No, because I don't see any end in sight. If you're going to wait even 3 months, you're going to pay another 3-4% for a house 3 months from today. So no, that's not a good philosophy. That would, you're hiding out and hoping that we have a bubble, which we're never going to, which this is nothing like a bubble. No, prices are going to keep going up. I think for the buyers out there, I think there's a couple of things that can be very helpful.
Anything there?
Yeah.
Dan?
Oh, for sure, to unpack there. That's just what we said. People are sitting around thinking it's a bubble. There's enough articles being printed and discussed about that. I had a conversation with somebody who I really like, and we deal with some people who are super smart and very engaged and read a lot. I mean, it's awesome, but there's certainly plenty of ways to talk yourself out of buying.
I know what you're going to say. Yeah.
And I think it's even harder for a lot of highly educated people who are certainly getting in for the first time to understand the logic of it's like they're jumping off a cliff. They really struggle with it. And I've just been straight with some of them and said, if you're just trying to rationalize it before you make a move, you probably won't make a move. Yeah. Maybe you don't need to buy. Maybe you need to wait for a much longer cycle to come back. Yeah. So there's no logic to it, but it's happening. And why is it not a bubble, as she says? And we keep hearing that repetitively as well. It's not a bubble because of supply and demand, number one, and number two, because unlike 12, 13 years ago, the financials are very strong. People are well qualified who are buying these properties these days, and they're putting down payments down. And it's very much unlike it was in the last real estate bubble.
Well, I just read this morning. I might have the number wrong, but we'll still get the message. Because of the pandemic, people have a lot of savings. They haven't been able to spend their money. And it's something like $5 trillion in savings. So that's the rest of the wave,
Maybe there's a shift. Certainly they've identified a lot of shifts towards what they call submarkets. Okay. People are like moving down a market, but even in those submarket moves where people are making, they're finding, so for example, if you're going from Los Angeles to Phoenix, because you like the heat, first off, but secondly, because it's a much more affordable market. What you're finding is that maybe Los Angeles has gone up 10% in price, but Phoenix has gone up 20%. Those submarkets have risen even more because that's a trend that's been happening all year during the pandemic. People are moving. They talk about a lot of moves. I'll be curious to see next year if there are more, how all those moves shake out post-pandemic. And I don't think anybody completely knows that, although urban areas are expected to thrive again.
To come back, right. Well, so there you go, guys. Don't intellectualize too much. It's too hard to deal with.
Be educated, but I just say you can pretty easily talk yourself out of it if you want to. Yeah.
Much easier to say no. Okay, let's keep going.
Number one, they should know what they're signing up for when they go out. Most are in shock, just that they're going to have to stretch on price. And most importantly, they're going to have to put their biggest bid up front. I mean, most buyers take the loss of 3 or 4 houses before they realize they have to really put their belly up to the bar. So figure out what's the absolute most you'll really spend on the house and put that bid in right on the front side. Because most houses are only staying on the market 1 day to 8 days right now. So you don't have the time to go back and put in a better bid. It's not that kind of a market. I think having an attitude that this is not your dream home. what you're really doing is getting in the game. It's important to get in the game and have a chip on the table so you can play the game, as you need a bigger backyard, you need more space for your kids, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of people are taking that first purchase too seriously. And
Wow. It's almost like we're in parallel about this.
Right. Our language is very similar. Yeah. Yeah, you talk about that a lot, Joe, when we go out and look at houses. Why don't you elaborate on that a little bit?
I'm trying to remember what I say. What do I say, Darren?
It's kind of about, it is about getting in the game. You need to start building equity. You need to, there is a savings when you get in. There's a forced savings that comes with home purchasing. And it's not, it probably isn't going to be your dream home. So the question is, where are you willing to sacrifice? And sometimes, like she said, it's 3 or 4 houses in where you identify where you're willing to sacrifice. And, recently we wrote an offer, and it was for us a huge offer price-wise. And basically what we said, we say this to most people, what price are you willing to pay where if you lose the house, if you don't get it, you won't regret it? Because that's the language we're using these days. It's not about, can I, squeeze out 5 or 10 less? It's about, okay, if you wrote this price and you didn't get it, you're going to be mostly okay with that. Or you feel like you at least gave it your best shot and there really wasn't much more you could do.
Yeah.
That's what we're telling our buyers these days.
Well, when she's talking about come out with your strongest offer price at the beginning, I mean, how do you feel about that? Because we're always kind of packing some powder for the second request. We can get in the game. It's hard to get in the game, as she's saying.
Yeah. I think there are a lot of smart agents in the areas we serve. And almost always, we ask the question to the agents, and this is often, the agent has the biggest influence on this, is how are you going to deal with offers? Are you going to counter a smaller group of offers? Are you going to counter everyone? Are you going to counter it all? If something blows you away, are you going to accept it? We try to get some sense of commitment,
Right.
kind of in those 3 categories. And then we advise our client what kind of offer to write. More often than not, we're looking for them to have at least a little bit of margin left, because most of the offers we write end up with a multi-counter, a best and final. But more often than not these days, they are not multi-countering everyone. So lowballing doesn't work. Yeah, it's the top few. They're definitely not sending out multi-counters to the whole pool of buyers.
Okay, let's keep going.
most importantly, in fact, I should have started with this. I think you have to waive all the contingencies, which scare the crap out of people. Meaning, you should get pre-qualified for your financing. To go out shopping without financing in hand, you have to be crazy, because you have to position yourself as an all-cash buyer today. And everybody's got a brother-in-law that's in the contracting business. I would, if I was buying a house, take a contractor out with me and shop with me, pay him by the hour, just come out and see 3 houses, because that contractor is better, honestly, than an inspection. He could tell you what's wrong with the house so you don't get in over your head.
Wow, man. She is cool. I never thought
Wow.
of that as that cool.
Well, it's aggressive.
Badass.
And that language is hard for most to absorb, and she acknowledges that.
Yeah.
Non-contingent offers are hard. I mean, we've written some that are close to that, not fully non-contingent, and clearly, I mean, going out without pre-approval is ridiculous. It's been ridiculous in LA for 20 years. Maybe in other markets it was more acceptable, but going out with a contractor, I mean, look, we're not licensed in any way to do inspections, but certainly our ability to evaluate a property, even as agents, in more detail in this market today, has been highly beneficial, so that there are fewer surprises, so that our clients can be more aggressive.
Yeah, she is right on. I get it. All right, next, Oh, I was going to say too, every now and then you see these programs about uh, we will give you cash to get your house, to buy your next house. You're going to be well ahead of everybody else. What do you say to that, at least in LA?
Cash to buy your next house. What are you talking about, John?
So I'm trying to remember the companies, but basically what they say is we will front you the cash so you can get the house that you want to buy because of this frantic market. And I'm sure they charge some sort of high percentage for that. Do you think that really gets you that far ahead in front of a seller, in front of a listing agent?
Well,
Cash versus finance. Yeah.
as she indicated, what does cash equal? Cash equals non-contingent. Okay, so well, there's always a cost. I think we all know that. We're all smart enough to know that. What is the cost? And I don't know the answer as far as what's being offered out there, but I'll say this. You put up a 3% deposit. My guess is you're going to pay more than 3% to do that. Okay. So if you're going to put up a 3% deposit to write your offer, the maximum amount at risk is that 3% if you default. Well, if you're willing to pay someone else that chunk of money, then write your non-contingent offer. And if you fault on the offer, that's the most you can lose. So, but there are other ways to navigate around some of these things if you want to be aggressive. And, it is a case-by-case situation on a comfort level for each buyer. Often a buyer that's buying their second or third home, A, has more means and more flexibility because you have more means. But B, just kind of understands the process better, so willing to be more aggressive. This is where experience is really moving those buyers ahead of the curve, and it's harder for people to come in who are first-time home buyers or just a little more hesitant to be aggressive.
Okay, let's keep going.
Barbara, you could put me in the depressed category as somebody who's been looking and seeing prices go higher and higher. Let me ask you this, though. When you look at markets around the country, what's one market, one city that you really feel like offers good value for the money? I know that's not how people move, but if you're looking at where things are heating up, where things offer the best value, what city or what markets do you see?
If I had to name one place, I'd say Raleigh. Surprisingly, the average sale price, I might be off by a few dollars, is around $340-ish. You get great value there, and it's also one of the top 3 hottest cities to find real estate. So it's the most competitive, but the values are still undervalued. And so many young families are moving in. It's an educated population. That's probably, in my mind, if you have to narrow it to one, probably the best value right now in America, even though you're going to have to compete to find a house there.
I think we can stop there, Joe.
Everybody go to Raleigh right now.
Yeah, right. I mean, years ago it was Boise, Austin. It's definitely on the. So look, if you can't buy in the market you're in, you start looking for submarkets, and you look for a culture or a trend in those areas that match who you are. If the air and that's been happening in real estate forever, really. So, I mean, when I bought my house, it wasn't the ideal neighborhood, but I could see that it was moving in the direction to be the ideal neighborhood. And now it looks like, I'm a genius. But it doesn't. You identify some of the trends and you got to jump ahead of the curve. We tell that to our buyers often. If you're waiting for that curve to catch up so you'll commit, there are people ahead of you that are predicting what's going to happen and are willing to take a chance on predicting a shift in a neighborhood to become what they want it to be. And by the time it gets to where you want it to be, now it's in the same category that you can't afford it anymore. So
next submarket. Okay.
I think we're all done with
Raleigh's
this
going to be very happy to hear you say that. I just came back from Durham not too long ago. Great spot to be, lovely down there. But enough real estate for me, Barbara. I want to shift over to your other area of expertise, of course.
All right. Well, there you go.
Yeah, she goes on to talk about business and employment and how actually the employment market is fired up and how it's going to be really hard to find people to work post-pandemic. Yeah,
I thought
it's
it
pretty
was great when
amazing.
I thought it was great when she was talking about how thankful and how much she expresses to her employees.
To her employees.
She loves them.
Right.